Hey, it's Terry with Something Spooky, and these are special videos because I'm reading some of my own stories. So these are from my book, Graveyard Games and Other Scary Stories, which I just released. You can find it on my page or on Amazon. If you enjoy these videos, please check it out. This story is called Tricky Treats. Emily Peoples and Jamie Kurtz approached the barricaded street in conversation. Jamie was telling Emily about a boy from their school, Sean, who they were supposed to meet up with at some point that night. A large banner above the street proclaimed Annual Main Street Chili Cook-Off. It evidenced its repeated presence over the many years, with the dull fade in its autumn colors and a slight fray of fabric on its corners. Beyond the rudimentary police barricade, the streets were crammed with people in Halloween costumes, as the cook-off also served as Billington's fall festival. The festivities zigzagged back and forth across the road to the different chili stands, which served samples in full servings, most benefiting some local organization or church. Emily was dressed as a skeleton, and Jamie was a tough-looking mercenary with black eye like a football player beneath her bright blue eyes. Both had just started their first year at Billington High and were nervously aware that this was the first big social event of their teenage lives. Although they were each dressed much more wholesomely than some of their classmates, they had already spotted Jamie fidgeted to get the tight uniform to sit comfortably, while Emily stood with an insecure slouch that caused the rib cage of the bones on her costume to bunch up and roll together. "Where are we supposed to meet him?" Emily asked, with a subtle exhaustion. "He said he would be by the fountain, but had to meet up with some friends first," Jamie answered, while scanning the crowd in front of them for four familiar faces. Emily and Jamie had known each other since the 5th grade and did their best to coordinate their first high school schedules as much as possible. Jamie had always been more outgoing than Emily. It was how they had met, and Emily had long recognized and appreciated Jamie's role in forging their own friendships and getting Emily into social circles she otherwise would have been neglected in. "Okay, well, I'm hungry, so do you think we can get some food before we catch up with them?" Emily turned on her toes as she spoke. "Ew, you're going to eat?" Jamie's tone revealed legitimate shock at the suggestion. "Yeah, it's a chili cook-off, and I'm a human who, eats food." As Emily finished, Jamie was already leading them across the road, past the parked police vehicles, and into the crowd. A hurricane of scents descended upon them. There was the prevailing meaty essence of chili, but also a cacophony of smoke, gas, carnival food, and what Emily could only assume was beer. Every adult on the street seemed to have a plastic cup in hand, and Emily quickly learned that the onus would be on her to avoid collisions with people more than twice her size. "Do you want to stop somewhere special? Does it make a difference?" Jamie asked as she assumed a slight lead in front of Emily and began to work them through the shoulder-to-shoulder crowd. "Yeah, that one place, Kitty's Kitchen or whatever. They always have a vegan option." Emily squeezed between strangers, shrinking her body and shuffling awkwardly sideways through elbows to keep up with Jamie. "Oh no, that place? It's so weird. The line is always so long and the people are so creepy." "I don't care. It's what I want. It's probably like the only thing I can eat here." Emily spotted the destination on the horizon. It was a pink wooden stand that seemed much more structurally sound than the other little pop-up tents neighboring it. A white awning and matching trim accented the elegance of the establishment. A large, black moving truck was parked directly behind the stand and was emblazoned with the pink logo of the restaurant. As Emily and Jamie joined the end of the line, Jamie turned with an exasperated sigh. "No one even knows where this place is," Jamie said. Emily pointed at the pink logo with the friendly-looking cat and a chef's hat on the truck. "It says Starry Heights right there." "Yeah, sure, but do you know anyone who's actually gone there? It's probably just someone's basement or something. And why did they come all the way out here?" Jamie advanced them up the line as they talked. "It's a chili cook-off, and they make chili. Would you stop whining? We'll meet up with your boy toy in just a minute." Emily's stomach grumbled as if to pile on. "You're going to like him, and who knows, maybe you'll even really like one of his friends." Jamie shot her friend a knowing, teasing look. "Oh God, please don't, not again." Emily rolled her eyes so far back they cracked her neck. I won't. Jamie threw her hands up defensively as she spoke. "Just promise me you'll be open-minded and let me know if you need any help." "Fine, whatever." Emily had lost interest in the subject as she strained to see around the people in front of her and catch a glimpse of the source of the savory smell drifting through the air. "You promise?" "Sure." "Say you promise. Shut up." As they reached the mild midpoint of the line, the booth finally came into view. There was more than a half dozen workers of all ages, from kids to their grandparents, rushing around the little booth and taking money from customers. They all wore bright pink shirts that, in a perfect inverse of the truck, had the Kitty's Kitchen logo on the front in black. Strikingly, they all sported unflinching, ear-to-ear, wide, toothy smiles, even while they took orders, counted out change, and passed the styrofoam containers of steaming hot chili to those waiting. They never faltered or broke. It was like the smiles had been surgically crafted onto their faces. "So weird," Jamie whispered, with a genuine hesitance in her voice. "They're happy, so what?" Emily also thought the whole thing was kind of strange. Everyone in town did, but Kitty's Kitchen won a coveted Best in Show blue ribbon every year. And, more importantly, they had vegan options. "You and your finicky vegetarian bologna," Jamie shot as they drew closer to the front of the line. "Vegetarian bologna sounds disgusting," Emily countered. As they reached the counter and Emily spotted a sign that had all of their different styles and serving options listed, Jamie leaned into her ear. "I'll be right back," she whispered, and quickly disappeared into the crowd. "Wait, what?" Emily started, but Jamie was already gone. She turned back to the counter where a short old woman with puffy gray hair waited patiently with that same signature smile. "One bowl of vegan chili, please," Emily ordered brightly as she handed over the money. Jamie fought through a mob of sloppy adults and kids dressed primarily in superhero costumes to get around the back of the booth. She discovered that the truck was actually parked partially in the stand, its rear cargo door consumed by a tarp that attached it to the structure. Jamie peered through this opening to catch a glimpse of the kitchen. It was surprisingly spacious, yet with the whole back room obscured from the counter by another hanging tarp. This cooking area was a large room, but few of the smiling workers were around. They would only appear through the divider long enough to walk up a small ramp that filtered into the back of the truck, and then re-emerge with a boiling pot of fresh chili that they would take and set on steamers placed around the enclosure. It had never occurred to Jamie before that you couldn't actually see the chili cooking at the stand, and that the workers would sometimes disappear behind that curtain and re-emerge with already prepared pots. As she contemplated this, she noticed a small icon emblazoned beneath the Kitty's Kitchen logo on the truck. In a circular pattern, with foreign symbols at its center, it read Church of Angelic Temple across the top and CAT across the bottom sphere. Just another Boy Scout churchy booth after all, Jamie thought, while also wondering where or what Angelic Temple was. She had never heard of it before. Just as she was about to leave and go find Emily, Jamie heard a sound that made her pause. It was the low rhythmic pulse of a feline purr, and it sounded like it was coming from the truck. Curious and always prepared to do anything for an animal in need, Jamie crept into the booth and circled around to the back of the truck. She stepped up on the small ramp with a trepidation she didn't quite understand. Sure, the place was weird, but there was no reason to be afraid. Maybe it was just that this was about the most defiant thing Jamie had ever done in her young, sheltered life. She knew she shouldn't be back there, and that a worker could walk in and catch her at any moment. As she approached where the tarp hung down over the cargo door like a flapping portal, the purring grew louder. Jamie slowly reached out and pushed back the black curtain out of the way to peer inside. What she saw froze her in shock, and she felt the hair on her arms tingle, standing up. 3 tall figures in dark purple robes stood around a large black cauldron. One stirred it with a long wooden staff, while another chanted in an unknown language with their arms raised up in the air. The third was holding a small, scared mouse by its tail above the pot. As it dropped the poor rodent into the steaming cauldron, Jamie caught a glimpse of its face and screamed. Beneath the shadow of its hood, this creature, while humanoid in its stature and size, possessed a feline face. A black cat, specifically, with whiskers and yellow eyes. When Jamie screamed, the other figures jerked their heads up, and she saw them to be the same. Before she even knew what she was doing, she was running down the ramp and back out through the hanging tarp into the crowd. Emily spooned the still smoking chili from its foam tomb to her mouth with a white plastic spoon. The crowd was somehow even thicker than when they arrived, and she only lazily scanned the street for Jamie, believing it a mostly futile effort. She saw lots of little ghouls, princesses, and plenty of Spider-Men, but no pretty mercenary. Resigned to this, she found a seat on the end of a picnic table, concentrated on her chili. After just a few spoonfuls, Emily was startled by a hand on her shoulder. She almost threw the bowl of chili in the air out of shock. Turning to her provocateur, she found Jamie with the color drained out of her face. The tough-looking mercenary had been replaced by a frightened damsel. "We have to get out of here right now," Emily stated in a deadpan tone. "Okay, but why?" Emily inquired, setting the bowl of chili down on the table. "You shouldn't be eating that," Jamie offered. No further reply as she grabbed Emily by the wrist and whisked her into the crowd. "I know how it sounds, and I don't know what it was, but I don't care, and I just want to get out of here." Jamie dragged Emily through the crowd, nearly bowling over a little Darth Vader and shoulder-checking right into a man dressed as a St. Louis Cardinals player. Even with her pulling, Emily could barely keep up with Jamie and was starting to drag her feet and breathe heavily. Just as they were about to emerge from the chili-hungry mob, Emily spotted a group of boys loitering around a lamppost. The most handsome of the bunch, a scraggly kid with long and curly blonde hair, stepped forward to the girls. "Hey, Jamie, sorry, we were just headed to the fountain." The boy seemed sweet and sincere. "Okay, sure, we're leaving now, sorry, bye." Jamie spewed almost as one word without even looking at the kid. "Really, I'm sorry, the boy couldn't continue because the pair was already gone, beyond the barricade of the street and into the shadows safe from the commotion." "Wow, you must really be freaked out to blow off Sean like that." Emily looked at her friend with concern as she spoke. "Look, I just want to go home. Never eat chili again. Are you coming with me or what?" Jamie's voice carried an authentic panic that Emily had never heard before. "Sure. I mean, my parents don't expect me home. I already told them I was staying, and I'm certainly not going back up there by myself." Emily was trying to stretch the skeleton costume off of her bones. "So what are we going to do instead?" She was worried about her friend, but was trying not to scare her further. "I don't know. We'll just play Monopoly or something." Emily and Jamie snoozed in the dim blue glow of the television in an otherwise dark room. An old horror movie played on the screen, and a ransacked Monopoly board demonstrated about half of a game. A bucket of candy was half filled with empty wrappers. Jamie's eyes popped open to the sound of a cat purring. It was the same low rhythm as before, but as she lay there frozen, it seemed to build to a rumbling thunder that shook the room. Slowly, Jamie rose. Emily remained passed out in the beanbag chair that she had started the movie in. Sensing something, Jamie moved to the large windows lining her wall. Down in the yard, figures in robes formed a crescent in the center of the lawn. She could actually feel the blood drain from her and choked on a small tear that leaked down her cheek. The silhouetted figures filled her with a dread that exceeded even the instinct of flight overtaking her body. She opened her mouth to warn Emily, but the words wouldn't come. Jamie forced her eyes shut and clenched her fist. She tried to tune out the hypnotic lull of the purring. She stood there for a long while, almost drifting to sleep on her feet. When she opened her eyes, the figures in the yard were gone. She gasped to catch her breath. Turning back to the room with a relieved sigh, she registered that the beanbag chair hosted an imprinted emptiness. Then she saw the yellow eyes in the shadows of the room and screamed.